Okay, hi everybody, and welcome to our respective Facebook pages. And if you're live, you're seeing us live. I'm Brian Hubbard on the What Doctors and Get Well Facebook pages, and it's my great privilege to have with us today Maz Sajadi. And there's lots to talk about with Maz, and there's lots of reasons for talking with Maz today. The first is he's an extremely interesting guy. And if you've never heard about him, Maz, hi, sorry, hello. And if you've never heard about him, you're going to hear a lot in the next hour, and it's well worth spending your time doing so. The other reason I'm interviewing Maz today is because he's at our show. Now, we've got a show coming up at London's Olympia from February the 21st to the 23rd. And Maz is going to be one of the chief speakers, speaking 3 times over the 3 days, Maz. And it's going to be it's going to be an absolute honor to have you at the show.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
And so for lots of reasons, we want to talk to Maz. I mean, first off, Maz, I would say, for want of a better term, I'm sure you'll correct my English, but you are a spiritual phenomenon. And
thank you.
And you sort of really just hit the scene from nowhere, it seems to me.
True.
I don't think you had books you'd written, but then suddenly there you were. And I know it's been nothing, there's no such thing as an overnight success, but really you don't seem to be that far from it, which means you must be having some pretty powerful medicine going on here, Maz. And I want to hear it. I mean, people probably who have Googled you will know that you had a couple of near-death experiences. I want to talk about that. You've helped many thousands of people. You know, and it is quite out there, some of your stuff, man. I mean, talking about you're changing people's coding, because I know you're a computer programmer.
Yes.
So you use that language, but nonetheless, that's what you're doing.
Right.
And you know, you have had some controversy, small amount of controversy, I must say, but you know, you're a powerful figure in this scene. And I really want to explore. We're going to talk about. I want to go right through, if I may, your life, how all this happened, and then talk more specifically about what you'll be talking about at the show, because you're talking about a few specifics at the show. Your sessions are going to deal with depression and chronic problems and creating a strong and healthy spine as well. So these are very practical things. It's
totally.
Yeah, and then so it's not just this, you know, recoding. Which, well, I'm sure it is recoding, but it seems to have a specific point to it with your sessions. So we want to go through all that. So, Maz, I'm delighted to have you here.
Thank you.
We were planning to do this, I think, a week or so ago with a complete outage, which I immediately blame on Maz, because as a master of it has to be that. It was either that or someone plugged the hairdryer in. Not sure what it was that happened, but we had a complete blackout here in London. And so we wanted to, so I'm delighted we can do it now. Maz, strong American accent there. So you were born in the States, presumably?
Actually, I was born outside the U.S. I was born in Afghanistan.
Oh, right.
But I came here. My father was a doctor. And he came before us. You know, he was a head surgeon in Afghanistan, and then he was such a brilliant man that they invited him over from France into the U.S. And then about 10 years later, he was settled, and we showed up, I think, in late 60s. So I was only like maybe 5 years old.
So do you have memories of Afghanistan?
I do. It was a very beautiful country. You know, we were quite blessed. You know, we were in the wealthy space, so we were quite blessed. Beautiful people, beautiful food, very kind individuals. Unfortunately, there's always a war. So, and we moved because of the Russian invasion coming through. Basically, so we, we had the opportunity to come to the U.S.
And what was your religious upbringing?
It'd be Islam, but you know, my father is really, or actually, you know, our family, it's not just like, you know, strict Islam or strict Catholic or Christian, you know, that staunchness. My father was a free thinker, so he always like made us like push those ideas or concepts that didn't really say work in
Right.
religion. Why
Right.
is there so many issues in religion?
Yeah.
As I would say, and probably got it from my father, just listening to him, and in conversation,
Mm.
because he'd have dignitaries and so on from all over the world
Mm.
come visit
Mm.
him because he was a
Mm.
doctor and they were sick.
Mm.
So they'd have interesting conversation. And I was just a kid, but and then through the work that I've done through my second near death, kind of seeing how, like, say, spirit or our higher self, I see it more as, your vital force. So it's
Mm.
not based on any religion or spiritual
Right.
values, because we want
Right.
to get away from that to get our pure. But I always say that if you're not getting the same results as a Jesus, a Buddha, a Muhammad, you're probably just doing it wrong.
Okay. Yeah.
Especially over the years. Does that make sense
Yeah.
too?
Yeah. It
I mean,
does.
if
Yeah.
you
Sure.
so so I'm not against any of those religions, but we need to practice the religions the way the originators
Yeah.
practiced those
Right.
religions.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. So,
Right. Well, Jesus wasn't a Christian, was he? I mean,
no, it
that
wasn't.
that all came afterwards.
Yeah,
But but
exactly. So,
so were you spiritual? Would you say growing up?
at the time, you would say that I was very intuitive.
Okay.
So spiritual, I thought everybody was it's just a state of being. So I
Yeah.
didn't have any spiritual bent or spiritual knowledge, if that makes sense to you. I didn't adhere
Sure.
to anything, not even
Okay.
say religion. But
Okay.
for me, is like, to me, spirituality is being your best possible self. So that connection
Okay.
between, say, your timeless version,
Mm-hmm.
your spirit, as spiritual or religious people would call it,
Mm-hmm.
and then your time bound version, your
Mm-hmm.
1% of who you are. So 100%, 1% is your reality here, your identity, your body, your physical experiences, right? The other 99% is what I focus on. That would be, people who might label it your spirit. Again, I call it your vital force.
Okay.
So, yeah.
But
So,
but what you're saying here, though, Maz, came about as a result of one or two of the near-death experiences. You didn't have
um,
these. Did you have these views before that?
no, I was very intuitive,
Mm-hmm.
because I
Yeah.
was very shy. So I
Okay.
think that's why I was very intuitive. So I would
Mm.
study people, because I
Right.
could never get the nerve to be the life of the party or talk,
Okay.
outward. So
Okay.
I just sat back and observed. So you can get very intuitive just observing
Yeah.
people's patterns and so on. And I think,
Yeah.
and that's Brian, I think that's really the difference, because there's a ton of near death experiences that happen every day. Just
Yeah.
here alone in the US,
Yeah.
say 1,000 documented near death. So
Yeah.
you have a lot of opportunities, but why aren't there more people like me,
Yeah.
with fantastic abilities? Because we
Mm.
all have these abilities, by the way. I'm not anybody special. I guess what makes
Mm.
me special is, like, I figured it out. And that's
Mm.
what I do. I help people.
Mm.
I don't want to say teach people, but I literally bring them into that state where they start to understand who they really are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, so was I intuitive? Yeah, I guess I was intuitive in a sense. Not necessarily spiritual, because I don't adhere to any belief systems. So I believe all aspects of religion and spirituality. Um, but the first near death really allowed me to, say, understand, like I was saying, not a version from our 1%, right? Our physical identity, our conscious mind of what's out there,
Mm.
what our higher standard is,
Mm.
our etheric body, our spirit
Mm.
body, what God is, and all that, but who we are at the 99%, what creates us here, our living force, if you
Mm.
want to call it
Mm.
that. I
Mm.
really understood it because I lived from that, say, that spirit level. If that makes
Mm-hmm.
sense to you. So,
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's backtrack a little bit there
okay.
because you became a computer programmer. You left university and
Hmm.
became a computer programmer. Is that
Right.
correct? And
Yeah.
how long was that going on for?
Oh, okay. So, well, my first near death was when I was going to the university. So I had
Oh,
a warehouse job, to
okay.
support myself.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I had that near death experience where I separated my identity. When people, say I'm sure everybody's heard of of people who have died, say on the operating table, and they can
Sure.
see their
Sure.
body hovering over themselves,
Sure.
right? And they can see everything. So that happened to me, but I had my jaws crushed and I had separated, but I was more conscious of the experience. So I could see and understand what we're really about. I could see that grander version of who we are, who we're supposed to be. So the closest thing, if you haven't had a near death, I've never experienced that like many people.
I haven't had one.
Yeah.
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 I think you took mine.
I'm too ahead of you. um, um, but that grandness that you feel deep inside, if only that could come out. Does that make sense? Especially if people are pushed and shoved, those dark moments in life, it's like, why can't I bring that full version of who I am out? Does that make sense? So that would be you understanding that there's a bigger, say, consciousness or a bigger version of you that is in complete in abundance. So that would mean you would be completely healthy, completely, say money would be no issue for you, relationships would be fantastic. Again, that bigger version of who we are. So I live from that space. That's real, by the way. It's not fake. It's not just theory or conjecture. But when you live from that space, you get to see this reality from a very different perspective. So that was the first near-death experience, and then I turned into I did computer programming for a while.
So that in itself didn't change you. Well, it changed you, obviously, your view of life and who we are, but it didn't change the course of your life at that point.
Well, no, it didn't change the course of my life. I got more intuitive. I used it to become successful in my own business, web development, computer programming, very connected to people. I could read, I could sense people, like future vision, like a lot of, say, inventors and so on. A lot of ideas came into me. So it did change me, but I didn't take anything of it. I just became, say, highly aware of my surroundings, and I didn't see life from, say, the human level, the 1% level. I saw it from a grander level, say, interacting with this reality.
So, okay, all right.
Yeah.
Okay. So and then when did the second ending
The
happen?
second, in my mid 40s, around 2006, 2007, and that was quite an experience. I had, my wife at the time, 4 kids. I have so many kids, I lose track. But I think at the time,
I'm sure you don't.
Maybe I've got 6 kids total. So anyway, so I had 4 kids at the time. So they were with me. And it was an inner tubing experience, on a cruise ship. We went to Belize, and it was an inner tubing, and the river was so fast and very dangerous. And it's quite interesting that as we were putting on our life jackets, I was intuitive enough to like check and double check my kids' life jackets, because for some reason it's like, it's like we have to be sure, we have to be cautious. But when they were handing out life jackets, for some reason, whether it's coincidence, I don't believe in coincidence or chaos, because we were talking about chaos theory.
We were.
They ran out of life jackets. So I'm going, okay, I'm fine. I'm a strong swimmer, so I don't need it.
Right.
But there was this ominous feel, just like in the movies, like it's like they play the eerie music, everything goes quiet. Brian, it was the craziest thing, but everybody noticed it. The jungle just went dead silent. There was no wind. There was no birds chirping. There was nothing. It was like, like eerie silence. And I'm going, even my kids going, Daddy, what is that? It's like, I don't know, but it was free. So it's like, well, everything's connected. So it's like the nature or the jungle knew that something was going to happen. And well, as soon as we pushed away into the river, the guide goes, you got to interlock your feet. So you stay with the group, because in Belize, they have many channels, off the tributaries, off the river. As soon as we pushed away, somehow I had to do something. I unlocked my feet, and my 2 kids, they were on their inner tubes. We got pulled into what they call a cenotes, basically a hole. in the bottom of the river that kind of like you pull the plug on your drain.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's like an ongoing drain,
Like
literally.
a
So I got,
whirlpool down,
yeah. So and I got
Oh.
sucked into one of those. I pushed my kids away, and then I just got, sucked out of the inner tube. And according to my wife at the time, I was underwater for about 8 minutes.
Oh my
Yeah,
God.
yeah. So and I was in the bowels of the earth. So it was a lava tube that is now filled with water, right? So, so I was getting sucked in to, inside this tube, a lava tube, a volcanic tube. And I'm going,
God.
wow, that's really crazy, because I thought I'd never die this way. It was so fast, I had so much to do. But I could feel myself peel away, kind of like revisiting the first near death. I could see my body like just literally like float down, into this tube.
Yeah.
And I'm going, okay. And I could feel the essence of the rocks as I ascended through, like your spirit, your essence. You can literally feel like merging into the rock and then into the fresh river water. And then you just escape into this bliss. And this is what makes me different, Brian, from what I'm seeing compared to a lot of the near deaths, like I said, is that you have the tunnel of light. I'm sure you've heard of the tunnel of light.
Of course. Yeah.
So you have your life story review.
Did you experience that as well, the tunnel? Or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So the first near death, I had a life review, which isn't really a life review. You relive your life. You literally like relive all of your life within maybe a matter of seconds. And it's not like you review and go, okay, you did this good, you did this bad, you did that. You understand it from a very high level individual reliving your life, and you're going, oh, that's why this happened to me. That's why this divorce happened to me. That's why this illness happened to me. So you really grow from that experience rather than get distorted from that experience, right? Because you have to grow and expand from that experience. So that's what the life review is about, if anybody's wondering. It's not for you to be judged in any way at all, Brian. That's a big no. The second one is like you graduate through that tunnel of light. So there's about 13 layers of that tunnel of light. So the first layer is where you've heard people go, my loved ones were there, welcoming me. It's like, hey, come on in, and they take you through the process. It's kind of like a college, so to speak. They just reset you. So with every layer, it's like time distortions get removed. So the essence of time will get removed from you, where you become your natural, say, 100% version of who you are at spirit level. So by the time you graduate, you are, say, a cleaned up spirit. So, but at that level, you're not supposed to come back down into physical form, right? So somehow I sneak through. I always manage to sneak through, get into shows and stuff where I'm not supposed to. I've always had that. I guess that follows me even after on the other side. So I graduated. I got to get a peek on what's the other side, right? And it's the most beautiful experience ever. It's like the most grandest. So imagine the amount of joy and love that you feel here, okay? And then multiply that by about 1 million or so times. That's the love that you are at and it's just raw love. There's no conditions. There's no nothing. It's just you. And it's not just the love for you. It's just the love for everything. And it's just the amazing feeling. So imagine if we all operated from that space. We'd be, well, we wouldn't have the issues or all the distortions in this reality. But I went beyond that. So, because at that level, Brian, you still have, say, a sense of human identity, if that makes sense to you. And, you brought up religion and so on. Again, not religious, but, there's a lot of good stuff in religion and spirituality. You can learn from anything. When, say, we're created in the image of God, however you define that, all the religions say that. So that's the essence, is that not maybe the physical identity of that, say, presence, but the abilities, because you do feel so expansive and so powerful, but you're just a fractal of obviously, that higher presence. and it's a grand feeling, but you still have the image of human identity. You can go beyond that, and that's what I did. I call it the beautiful blue space that you enter. So there's no form, there's no identity or consciousness of like a physical form or human body. You expand into a universe, literally like a universe, and there's no time there. So although it feels timeless, although it seems forever, you don't get bored or anything because there's no time, and you're so present, and you're just in awe of what's out there. At that level, you have access to, well, everything that there is, all the knowledge, how, say, the universe was created, and everything else, basically. All the possibilities, knowledge, ideas, whatever, of whatever was in the past, you have access to, whatever is, and what shall be in the future. And somehow, I've managed to, say, pull that down into this physical form and still stay connected to it.
But was there something about you, because when people say about this, they didn't want to come back because it was so beautiful.
Right.
So was there something conscious in your experience that said, I've got to go back? Or
no, yeah, you don't want to go back. It's like, why would you? But it's not, you really don't have a choice, it's like, and then, well, the first near death, that experience happened where it's like, gosh, I don't want to go back. You love your family, I was a kid of 22, and it's like, well, I had a whole life ahead of me. It's like, but this is much cooler. This is like, I want to adventure here. But so they don't give you a choice. It's like, yeah, you can stay here, or you can go back. And as they push you back into, your identity. So is it a choice? Not really, because it's like, I think that choice has been made at a higher level for you. By you probably, but you're still not that conscious. So they literally like just push you back. So
right. So I mean that sounds quite extraordinary, and but you were able to bring this knowledge back with you, back to Earth.
Yes. So it took me about 3-4 years to figure it out. And what that is that we're so ingrained with our identity from our family lineage. So I'm a computer programmer, by the way. So again, it's all science and quantum physics and about space-time. So just think, Brian. So you, for example, when you were born, or when you, say, came into time. So when your first cell that was created, right? The connection between, sperm and egg, right? That instance, there's a flash. There's literally is, they proved it now, but I've been saying it for years. There's literally a flash of light that happens. That flash of light is, say, a creation of your spirit, if you want to call it. Because most of your listeners are more of a spiritual, so I'll explain it at a spiritual level. So that flash of light is like when your spirit, say, connects or bonds into your physical identity, or that first cell. And there's a beautiful, say, grace to it. But that flash of light is what I call is that you get timestamp. So which means that you understand time and space from that point on. So again, it's a timestamp on how you, say, acknowledge time, or how you grow and expand. And I can get to that in a bit. But you, like I said, Brian, would have been the latest version of your family. So all their issues, their, not hair color, eye color, skin color, not just the physical hereditary patterns, but illness patterns, relationship type issues, finance issues, addictions, your outlook on life, pretty much everything, right? You would be the latest version of your family, because, well, look at your parents, right? Most likely you're emerging of their patterns, and their parents, and then their parents, and their parents. I mean, how many generations go? So how many distorted patterns? Because in the human world, we don't evolve like animals do, or nature does, right? Because animals always evolve to their best, highest state. So for example, because I'm going to be talking about, depression and some of the other physical issues. So for example, in the animal kingdom, say the lion, population, say they had a disease or heart issues, in one generation or two, they would evolve out of that, and there would be no more heart issues in that race. Humans don't do that. Humans just hold on to their garbage, you know, whether it's depression, anxiety, and all that stuff. So we're bringing in a programming right off the get-go on how you're going to live your life. I would say about 90% of who you are, how you identify your life, is from your parents' version, and then the other 10% is, say, your spice of life that you add onto it. You really can't get away from that unless that's what I do. I disconnect you from, say, that programming.
Okay, I mean, this distortion happens, as you say, through the generations, and yet we are all the time anyway. This thing that you saw in your second near-death experience.
Yes.
So why do we screw up so much? Why do we come through? Why do we need to have a near-death experience in order to know this?
We don't. We have many chances, multitudes of chances every day to awaken and go, hey, this is my higher self. You know, there's more, there's bigger, but we don't pay attention because we have these blinders on, you know, we have a filter. So for example, if say you've been abused all your life, does that make sense? And then just reading your scanning your, say, people who would listen, there's been a lot of abuse or victimization that happens in your audience from what I'm saying. And again, no offense, I'm just telling you what I see. So when you run, say, a pattern of abuse, does that make sense? So you would look at the rest of your life. Say you got abused, you know, at age 12. You know, obviously there's you know, progression. So from the age 12, you know, a major incident happened, you got abused. So you would look at the rest of your life from that abuse pattern because you don't want to ever happen it again. But unfortunately, since you're always, say, looking for abuse now, unfortunately, you would run patterns of abuse the rest of your life. So the opportunities, you know, you're so, say, tunnel vision of not being abused, you would miss the opportunities that would be available for you to, say, see another path. Does that make sense to you?
But do you think it's a necessary part of being a human that we have to go through this stuff?
No, not necessarily. Overall, and then that kind of goes into, you know, I did something wrong. We want to experience this, but how many other people, Brian, throughout history have, say, we haven't learned from the past because we recycle from the past. Does that make sense to you?
Sure.
So, and the reason why it happens to humans and not necessarily nature is because nature is stuck in the present moment. So it's evolving always to its highest self, if that makes sense to you. That's why disease, distortions, whatever, never happen in the animal. Well, they do, but again, they get weeded out, right? Or that lineage gets extinct, and then a new form, you know, comes on board. Humans, because we have a higher consciousness, and this is what makes us different, we have free will. So we have free will to create. But so I'm not saying that we're off or we're wrong or we've sinned in religious or spiritual terms. It's like we're very young. We're a very young, say, consciousness, spiritual consciousness, trying to figure how time and space works. So we haven't figured out how this reality works yet, so we make a lot of mistakes. So I'm here to help, say, humanity maybe make less mistakes and learn from the past, because how many wars can we have? How many diseases can we have? How many abusive patterns can we have? We should have learned that from a long time ago. If you take it at a personal level, maybe this makes more sense. And we've all had individuals or friends or loved ones or people in the family. It's like we look at that person from an outside perspective and we go, why aren't they learning? Why are they keep making the same damn mistakes? If that makes sense to you, right? So we see it from a higher version and going, okay, you made that mistake then, and then you make it again, and then you make it again. You see patterns. So I see patterns in humanity, and I guess my job or my mission is to go, hey, humanity, not just individuals, but the bigger version of why I'm here is like, hey guys, you know, been abusive to ourselves. We've been ill. It's not about that. It's about, say, healing ourselves so we can get to the bigger picture. Because in this reality, the consciousness is always healing ourselves, always preventing something, all that stuff. We can never get to the meat of why we're here, which is understanding our grander version or experiencing our completeness in physical form. We can never get to that version, although all the religions, all the politicians and all the dreamers always want that, right? It's like a world of completeness where we don't have to worry about hunger, illness, and all that stuff. And that's what I'm about. It's like, let's get rid of it. Let's heal ourselves so we can be, the most, say, optimal version of who we are.
Okay, let's pick up the narrative again and get you back on board that boat, because presumably you were rescued, presumably, and
yes, I wasn't rescued, by the way. So I wasn't physically rescued.
Okay.
So I was in the bowels of the earth somehow. Again, that grander experience, I call it the universal knowledge base, or the beautiful blue space. So, and then is like blackness came through, and then somehow I found myself about, say, 50 yards above river where I got sucked down. So I should have been downriver, but I was looking at the place that I had sucked in. So it was through divine intervention. And I was just sitting like in a shallower area where it's quieter, and I'm going, what the heaven just happened? Not hell, but what the heaven, because it was like the most beautiful essence. And I'm going, whoa. And that's where I started to see the layers of how this reality worked, because I was so conscious.
And you remembered all of this. You remembered everything.
Oh,
that happened to you.
Yeah, it was so clear. Yeah, because it was from a timeless realm, so I can see it or experience it as it happened, like just yesterday.
And you still have access to that now.
Oh, totally. That's where my abilities come from.
Right. And so just to pick up the story, I mean, so at what point did you stop doing computer programming in that case?
Well, true. So when we got back on the ship, which was a whole ordeal in itself, because the ship had taken off. Oh, wow. So we were on a little dinghy trying to catch up to the cruiser, because the cruise ships, they don't stop for anybody. Right. But anyway, so but as I got on the ship, I was seeing this blurry, like grayish cloud around people. But when I was looking at, say, inanimate objects, the carpeting, the pictures, and so on like that, my vision was perfectly clear. And then I'd look at people, and I'm going, well, what is that orb around people? And then and almost immediately, I could look at people and just read their story, like their whole storyline, and it wasn't channeling or anything like it. So I don't have psychic abilities. This goes way beyond that. I just like look at somebody and it's like, whoa, I could see their health issues, their marriage, relationships, and all that stuff. And I'm going, what the hell is going on? Wow. At first, I thought I was seeing like auras or chakras. And then, but I was just seeing a gray orb around people. And I'm going, well, auras and chakras, because that's all I knew. Like that's color. Maybe when I graduate, I'll start to see colors. But so what most people see auras and chakras, I see people's spirits. How, again, your mainframe, or your spirit. Basically, I see your spirit, and from that, I see your, say, blueprint on how your life will be created in this reality. So,
and you also see the future of these people as well.
Yeah, I can, and that's how I really, say, extrapolate or change people's lives. So it took me about, just to answer your other question, so it took me about 3-4 years to figure it out. And I would look at people and I would go, hey, let me work on you. It's like, and I didn't even know what that meant. So, I would like touch people, and like, for example, my ex-wife at the time, she would get severe headaches, migraine headaches, and I would just like hold her head, and like the migraines would just like disappear. And it's like, whoa, and I didn't believe in that stuff. I'm going, so what's going on? And, I searched the internet and there was really nothing that compares to it. Because it's everything else that I've experienced or people tell me about is more energy. So physical energy, and I can talk about that, but I go beyond. It's a timeless energy. Again, your spirit. So And that, I would see people like family. I started, say, healing them, or they would heal themselves. But I don't heal anybody, by the way. I'm not a doctor in any way, but people do heal themselves from fantastic, like terminal diseases and all that. They heal themselves. Um, and then, well, eventually there was people, just strangers, calling me up. It's like, hey, I heard so and so, you healed them. They would say you healed them, but they healed of X issues. Their relationships are better. So that got to be more of a business for me than computer programming, because there were so many people. People would be coming to my door and going, my son's really ill. People from the neighborhood. It's like, can you help my son? It's like, it's like, sure, and it really worked. So I'm going, wow. And it got to the point that it was like I was busier helping people, and it was more of a passion for me, because when you help heal a little kid from their diseases, and that's really, I have a soft spot for kids, and you see them just turn around like in a couple of days, and I'm going, wow, it really lit something in my heart, and it's like, wow, I have to get more into this. And then here I am, almost a decade later.
So it almost started word of mouth, and it just built from that point, really.
It still is a word of mouth. Yeah. Okay. So we have to get our business. Yeah. Because we tell, we help somebody and it really works. You don't have to believe like, and 10 years later, keep doing it, because I reprogram you the next day. For the most part, people feel different.
Could you explain that a little bit more? You use computer programming terms, but what actually is going on? What are you actually doing?
Well, yeah, the best way to describe it is, again, computer programming. So everybody has a program that we operate from. Again, that program, if you want to call it genetic coding. So, for example, you don't have, say, control over your eye color, right? It's a precondition from your mom and dad, right? That you've absorbed, have adopted. So, like I said, your illness patterns, your body shape, your relationship issues, most likely it's their filter or their programming or their genetic coding that you've adopted. Does that make sense to you? Sure. And then from that, so your life has already been on a path, right? It's preconditioned. So within that path, you create your own, say, spice of life. Simple as that. So you might think you're different, mostly different from your parents, but if you look at the closer, say, outcome, it's pretty similar. Even if you're the direct opposite, of your parents, what are you getting, right? What is the bottom line face value? So what I do is I can scan you. So what that means is that whether you're in front of me, or say if you talk about somebody, or if they're like, I do a lot of my sessions online, so I don't have to see the person. I can see exactly, say, what your genetic coding is, or your spiritual blueprint, or or you say your Anaki, what is it? The Anaki books. Yeah, what is that? I don't know, the spiritual people. I'm not that spiritual, so I don't know all the knowledge. But your book of, say, your life, that coding, if you want to call it that, I just see it as your genetic structure, or your programming, as I call it. So I can pinpoint and go, oh, you run a pattern of abuse, you run a pattern of this, your mother did this, and because of that, this X is Y, Z is happening to you. So I get to the core level issue on why you have the issues that you do. And then from there, I not only see it, but then it's like, well, let's edit it or delete it. Because you can't change what happened to you.
Yeah.
But successful individuals, say, change the meaning of what happened to them so it benefits them. Does that make sense? So say for example, and this really happens, Brian, say that something happened to you at, let's say, 10 or 11 or 12 that really, say, distorted your life patterns. I'll go back and, say, edit that. So you at 50 or 60 or whatever, you would feel like a 12-year-old reliving that state, and it creates a time ripple, and then your version of who you think you are at the present moment totally changes. And this is where people wake up and go, wait a second, I don't have to have cancer anymore. And then they go, I don't have to have cancer anymore. And then they heal themselves, they have cancer. if that makes sense to you.
Yeah. I mean, can we just touch on that for a moment? Because you said
Sure.
that, talked about cancer as one example, but,
Mm-hmm.
you know, whilst you talk, a lot of people talk about blockages, you know, you're not being your full self and all the rest of
Mm-hmm.
it. We hear, but you also say that illness, disease is a manifestation of this same process. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
so cancer would be that. So yeah, explain
Right.
that.
Yeah. So what you would call a blockage,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense to you, and then
Mm-hmm.
hence you would have, say, cancer or whatever else. Does it make sense? So
Mm-hmm.
that blockage, it's not really a blockage. I guess I kind of see it as a pattern of how you run your life. So most modalities, including Western medicine, Eastern philosophies, praying, and all that stuff, what they do is they see that blockage and they try to compress it or create a workaround that blockage. But that blockage still exists. For just to give you a clear example, addictions. If that makes sense to you, right? Alcoholism. Okay? So you go to AA, you deal with your problems. You still have that problem, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
still
yeah,
have those issues.
yeah,
So you create a workaround, or say you have a disease where you
yeah.
take medication or you have surgery, whatever, but you still have a propensity of getting that disease in another form. So what I do is like, well, you have that blockage. Let's just delete it out of your system, your identity. So that blockage is like removed now. It's just like gone. So like say an addictive personality, it's like, wait a second, there's no need for me to say resist alcohol. I just don't need it anymore, for example. Does that make sense? So let's say like an alcoholic, I'm not alcoholic. So what's the program that I'm running that makes me not alcoholic or wanting to get addicted to things? So that programming basically I install in that person that's alcoholic, remove their pattern for whatever reason it is. And then they're not alcoholic. So this is where people who say, for example, smoke, they have nicotine patches. Again, that pattern is underlying, right? It still runs in them. Now you're trying to suppress it. This is where NLP and all the other things that we do, they're fantastic modalities. But what I do is like, hey, let's delete that. And then hypnosis, NLP, and surgery, Western medicine, they work a lot better because you're more congruent, you're healthier. Does that make sense to you? So,
Yeah.
so those modalities work on getting your physical body in shape. But most of the time, you don't even need the physicalness. You just like feel better. So.
Do most people who come to you have a physical problem rather than, say, a psychological issue?
Well, you might be confusing psychological issues with, say, spiritual programming or spiritual identity.
Okay.
So there's a physical issue, right? Yeah. So, and for a lot of times, they've tried everything else, and I'm their last resort. You know, especially people who are in the mainstream or like, they're really say intelligent, so to speak, or scientist type, and they can't figure it out. It's like, oh hell, I've heard about this guy. Let's just give him a try. So I go down. Yeah. So there's the physical issue, which is basically again a core level programming, as I call it, and then there's a psychological issue, right? Like depressions and so on like that, or how you see your life. So there's that. But so what goes beyond psychology or your subconscious, right? So what makes you think your thoughts that you do, right? And just to give you a simple example, so the thoughts that come out of you, most people try to control the thoughts that come out. If that makes sense, right? By thinking positive or negating whatever comes out.
Or
But
suppressing, yeah.
right. So the psychology, so the physicalness would be the thought, and then it'll turn into disease or whatever, your life experience. You would go to a higher level, and then it's like, well, how does that thought process through your psyche? And that would be the psychological issue, like what's coming out. But I goes like, okay, what's producing that thoughts? What is making you think the way you think versus somebody that thinks very differently than you? Does that make sense? Where's the original, say, fountain of those thoughts? If that makes sense to you. So that would be your spiritual blueprint, as many of your listeners would understand. I would call that your core level or your source code. So it goes beyond, say, psychology. You, Brian, you don't. One of my most of well, most of my best, say, turnaround scenarios are people who don't even realize that I've worked on them. I've worked on them through their loved ones because they were too ill, they're too whatever. So they didn't even know, but they switch around.
Yeah.
So,
And
so you don't have
helped...
to believe in what I do.
Okay, but you've helped thousands and thousands of people now, haven't you?
Close to about 100,000 or so.
Truly, is that right? Really?
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. And there's right across the spectrum, from rich and famous, royal family, it says, down to ordinary folk too, and it's quite extraordinary.
Yeah.
And you get caught. It sounds like you got some corporates here too. Starbucks and Facebook are mentioned as well.
Oh, totally. Yeah, there's people from Starbucks, like CEOs, and that's what really intrigues me. Is I guess, like healing people, resolving their issues, and so on like that. It doesn't take long for me to help people recover and heal. Literally, it does. You don't have to spend decades or your whole life trying to recover from something. Literally, you can do it in a short period of time.
But what really is that? Yeah, sorry, Matt. Just to pick up.
Go ahead.
So when you say that, well, what time frame are you talking about, or does that depend on the individual?
It depends on the individual, but most people start to, depending on how awakened you are, depending on, and not at a conscious level, but at a deeper level, and with my abilities like really ramping up, and a lot of your listeners might actually be feeling my frequencies even while we're talking, because that's how I resonate. In a very short time, I would, and again, I'm not a doctor or anything like that, but people like reclaim their lives in from almost instantly to just say within a week or two, they'll start to notice the changes. So the more ill you are, obviously you do recover, but obviously you have to, it takes time for your body to come back to, its healthy state. But people have recovered from, well, again, terminally ill issues, neurological type issues, obviously depression or suicide type patterns. People like 1 foot in the grave. Literally the doctors go, hey, you've got 3 months to live, and now they're on their like 5th year and they're like more vibrant than ever. People start to reverse age and all that. So it's amazing at what can be out there, and people, I mean, they make money, their relationships get better. It's not just about, say, health. So it's a whole, I don't just say fix one aspect of your life. I help you, say, identify who you are. Okay, bro, think of it this way. Let's just give you another analogy. If you understood the grandness of who you were, say your spirit level, everybody's trying to access their spirit, right? So at your spirit level, would you be diseased if you were an awakened spirit? No. Would you have relationship issues?
I guess not.
No. Would you have financial issues?
I probably wouldn't care about it.
There you go. So of course you wouldn't care about them. So whatever that you needed would show up. You would live your grander version of who you are here. So I get you to realize that grander version, and then everything heals. So it's not just about healing your health. It's about healing your whole entire, say, human design.
So does someone have to be ready for this, though? I mean, they've come to you, so presumably in that sense they are ready.
Yes.
I mean, if people resist, does it work, or?
It doesn't matter. You don't have to believe me. Again, some of the best cases are people who don't believe me, and because I bypass the psychology. Obviously, I access your spirit level acknowledgement to say if it's okay to work on you or not. Because sometimes very few people go, well, that's just their lot in life, so I help them understand their lot in life, so they kind of wake up from that. But for the most part, people are ready if they show up, or a lot of times, and this is where people are ready, it's like people fly, take 13-hour flights to come see me, and they just go, oh, Masajati, I heard his name, or I saw his picture, and I go, I have to come see him. So, that's a directive from like a higher order going, okay, this guy can help you. So
do you get tired yourself? Is it a drain on you doing this work?
I'm glad you bring that up, because as the world evolves and as more clarity comes into this reality, there's going to be, and I'm sure your individuals go to a lot of, say, other healers and so on like that. You want to be sure that that person that, say, is working on you is of clear thought. So for me personally, I don't get drained because I'm not using my frequencies. So, and that's the key. I use what I call pure source frequencies, your original source of who you are, to, say, bring you into your higher status. Most individuals are out there use their own frequency. So basically they're healing you or controlling you, so to speak, from their own frequencies. So those types of individuals. So if you're working with somebody, look at their character, look at their health, look at their, say, finances. So if they're not at a good level, they're not doing it right. They might be kind of helping you, but at a deeper picture, they're not. Say they're giving you an ounce of healing, but they're pulling it, like taking a pound back. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah,
that's why you have to keep on going. With me, is like you'd literally see if it works for you or not in a very, like, in one, like 2-3 minute session. You'll just see, because you'll see the changes right away. So again, the key is that I don't use my frequencies, so I can work on, like, I'm sure we'll be really busy because we're always the busiest booth. So you better watch out for that, Brian. You better have crowd control or something.
Okay,
because literally, no matter where we go, there's just a huge crowd.
Just people come, okay,
so people, the booths around us kind of get a little mad. But so I'm just giving you a heads up. But anyway, you'll notice it. But I can work on, say, a couple hundred people in a day. Nobody does that, and still stay energized. I have to go work out after that because I'm in a timeless space.
You do look very fit and well, I must say.
I'm 59 years old.
Well, you're looking a good, very young, young 59.
Yeah.
But, so we got it, Maz. We're talking to Maz at the moment. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're coming towards the end of our promised hour.
Oh, Maz. Wow, so
but
fast.
The reason, I know, is, well, we entered a timeless state, I think.
Yes.
But the reason we're having this call today is because Maz is going to be at the Get Well show in London, Olympia, February 21st, 22nd, 23rd, speaking every day. And I mean, this guy is so interesting, amazing, very strong character, very powerful man. You've got to come and see him. And now, Maz, if we just briefly just touch on some of the talks you'll be doing over the 3 days. And on the first day, the Friday, you're going to be talking.
I'm trying to look it up.
Depression.
If you can just read it for me.
Yeah, it just says Friday is self-healing from
anxiety and depression. Yes. Yeah. So I have a very different version on anxiety and depression, or even like suicide. And I would say that those individuals, and again, I'm not a doctor. I don't claim to cure anybody or anything like that, guys. But what I do is I awaken your own natural healing abilities, and then you heal yourself. Okay. So again, I'm not here as a healer or cure anything. But I can guarantee from other people's experiences that I get to the core level issue on, say, where anxiety and depression actually exist, and I'll be doing demos on how fast you can change that, say, within seconds. I can get people into, say, feeling, and it's not just a feel good and then you walk away and it disappears. It's just like you change that coding in you, that programming, and you start to feel good inside, and it sticks. So a very deep version on depression and anxiety.
So you'll be explaining it. So you're going to bring some people on stage and demonstrate it as well? Okay. All right. Sounds good.
Yep, definitely.
There's the Saturday, you're going to do conscious awareness for chronic conditions. So what's conscious awareness got to do with chronic problems?
So see if I can give you an example, maybe better. So sometimes, if you look at diseases, yes, there's like chronic patterns that run in the family. Why does it run in the family? Like, abuse patterns or alcoholism, or even, say, cancers. Does that make sense to you? What is the, say, key pattern? So why would an awakened individual, say, create a chronic illness or disease? Okay, there's usually underlying cause. So I pinpoint exactly what that underlying cause is, and this is where people cure themselves of their, like, stage 4 say cancers, and then they awaken and they go, I don't have to have that, and their tumors like disappear. So again, I'm not claiming I cure anybody, okay? But there've been, gosh, I don't know, dozens and dozens of people that, you know, the medical community has given up on them, but you remove that underlying pattern and they heal themselves. So, and then just to get a little deeper, sometimes what happens is that people say create a disease for themselves because they want to give up on life. They couldn't find the solutions. Does that make sense? Kind of goes back to the anxiety. So they get ill or some excuse, right? Physical illness to say escape out of life. So I think many of your audience would kind of resonate with that.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's very interesting because an old friend of ours, a guy called John Diamond, who did a lot of work in this field. He was an oncologist, but he said that in a lot of cases of cancer, people weren't angry enough, and I think it sort of relates a little bit to what you're just saying.
Yep. Yep.
And this is yeah. Sorry, Tom.
Just one more thing. So, like for example, cancers, and this is where that. So, if you do research on me, you know, on the web, you'll find there's some, you know, negative articles. It's just because I'm popular, and you're going to have that name. So, this is where that lady like has turned it around. That, you know, that unstable lady says negative things about me. Where I call it honorable suicide. So, honorable suicide is that where people give up on their life. You know, and they don't want to commit suicide because it looks bad, and then they'll go, well, I'll just get a cancer or something terminal, and that gives me an excuse to escape out of life. Does that make sense to you? And that's what I call an honorable suicide. Again, that lady, you look at it, if you look at me up, you know, that might show up. So, but anyway,
that's what that's about, is it? This particular line of thought.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we should say also, Maz, I'm sure not in every case of cancer is this the case. It's not.
Of course, no. I'm just giving an example. But you remove, say that loss of hope for themselves, and those people like literally like turn around. Obviously, I mean, that's just say one reason why you would have say
exactly
a cancer.
Yeah, of course. And then, so on the Sunday, the Founder Day show, the 23rd, you sound quite pragmatic. For you, Maz, I mean, I'm surprised you even bother turning up to do this one. Healing the spine. You're going to strong and healthy spine. This sounds quite different from what you normally do.
Well, true, but as I work on individuals, people's spine literally start to adjust. So people who have had, say, chronic issues, again, I don't say I claim to cure anybody, but I can adjust people's spines without even touching them. So it's not a chiropractic session or anything like that. But what's causing the underlying pattern of you to say get this, you know, have an incongruent spine? Especially if you have like scoliosis and so on like that, there's usually, say, of a spiritual nature or programming that, you know, because even if, say, for example, scoliosis, you have surgery sooner than later, the scoliosis, the curvature comes back. So if you remove that pattern, your spine starts to naturally, say, straighten out. And there's been a ton of cases that I've helped people with their spine. So that's why that shows up.
Okay. I mean, it's interesting. I was watching, obviously, Googling you before as well, Maz. And there was an interesting interview with a woman, I think, who was doing a Norwegian spiritual channel. She interviewed you for a and you started working on it, and she started to go like that, and she was virtually flat out on the sofa. Well, you say, of course, but I mean, I don't know if she was even aware herself that she was virtually flat out.
No, and that's the yes. So you'll see that, right? So if you know, come to the show, and like you'll have people laying on the floor, because when I work on them, they change so dramatically that, well, they don't know what to do with their bodies as their body literally like reconditions right then and there. So yeah, it's a crazy, if you're a stranger and you're looking, it's like, whoa, what the hell's going on? Because you'll have a few people laying on the floor, or people like going back and forth, and you know, because I get people into deep states, although they're standing, because we just don't have room for people to stand, sit down. But it's like what's going on? You know, what's going on in this booth? And you can feel the energy, you know, come out when you have that many people. It's really
very interesting,
an amazing, say, sight to see, because just watching people,
it is
you'll start to feel different. Yeah.
So here we have. I mean, it's the Get Well show. It's going to be
Yeah.
21st to 23rd of February at London's
Yes.
Olympia. Maz, you're speaking 3 times, but also during the 3 days of the show, you're going to be on hand on your stand and helping people as well.
Yeah.
So there's
private sessions, one-on-one.
It sounds fantastic. I mean, it's an absolute must. I mean, we have 40 speakers at the show. We've got 90
Oh, wow. It's going to be good.
Yeah, so Maz is one, and on his own he's worth turning up for. But I mean, we do have 39 others too. But I mean, so Maz, it's been a great pleasure. I think we've done our hour, I believe.
It went by really fast.
It did.
Thank you so much.
I very much enjoyed it, Maz.
Thank you so much, Ron.
I look forward to meeting you in the flesh.
Yes.
Yeah, very soon. And thank you so much. It's fascinating, and I know.
Thank you so much, my friend.
No, and I think everyone should hear you and witness you as well. So thank you for that, Mas. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. You take care. Bye-bye.